Hi YouTube world, hi YouTube subscribers. So like I said in my last video, I wanted to make a video basically just telling the story of the time when I was kidnapped. Um, I've tried to make this video a couple times already, and it's hard to make because you wind up getting emotional, but I'm gonna tell it. And the reason why I'm telling it is because I want people to be aware that this can happen to anyone at any age, any gender, and it can happen in any neighborhood, even if you think you live in a safe neighborhood. Um, like I thought I did. I grew up in a rural suburb, a very wealthy area. Um, Bad things didn't usually happen where I lived. It was like all white neighborhood, wealthy. I lived like 45 minutes away from Philly, and that's where everybody thought the bad stuff happened. Bad stuff didn't happen in our neighborhood. That's what we thought. So I'm just trying to make people aware of the fact that kidnapping can happen, like, regardless of where you live, what age you are. And I'm going to give tips at the end of what we can do to help stop this from happening more, and also what you should do if you're in this type of situation. Okay, so when I was 14 years old, I lived in a rural suburb in Pennsylvania, like I said, and it was considered a safe neighborhood. Not a lot was going on. I was really bored a lot of the time, so me and my sister, we would go for walks to break the boredom. And one summer at the end of the summer, I think it was like August or late July, we decided to go for a walk and to go get water ice from the closest restaurant to our house. So we walked a couple miles, and by the time we got to the restaurant, we were both really tired. We were overheated, and we were hungry, everything. And we were thirsty. So we were disappointed when we got to the restaurant. It was closed. So we decided to start making our way back home. And my sister thought that we should stop on the way home at a golf course along the way and see if we could get drinks from like their clubhouse. So I agree with her. We start walking back home. We pass this golf course. I decide to wait on the side of the road for her, figuring she's not going to be more than 10 minutes or a few minutes away from me, and it's a safe, wealthy golf course. I can practically see the clubhouse, so I start like watching her as she's walking away, and I'm sitting there waiting. I was too like tired and overheated to follow her. So as I'm waiting, all of a sudden, a young man in a golf cart pulls up to where I'm standing, and he introduced himself and asked me if I'm looking for somebody. And, again, I'm 14, so I'm not thinking much of it. And I'm like, yeah, like, I'm looking for my sister. And then he starts describing my sister to me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like, how'd you know? Yeah, that's who I'm looking for. So he tells me, oh, well, why don't you hop in the golf cart and I'll give you a ride up to the clubhouse and we'll go find her. So I don't really think much of it, and I hop into the golf cart, and he starts to drive up to the clubhouse, but he's going very slowly. He's making small talk with me, asking me how old I am, how old is my sister, and I told him the truth. I said I'm 14, she's 11, and then somewhere in the conversation it comes up, how old is he? I don't remember if I asked him or if he told me, but he tells me at some point he's 25 at the time. And he keeps getting out of the golf cart, stopping it, and going to putt on the green. And I'm kind of like, that was my first, I guess, red flag is, why is he not taking me to my sister right away. Why does he keep making these stops? But, he seems friendly, he's helpful, he's personable, so I just keep talking to him. And then eventually he gets close enough to where I see my sister walking towards us away from the clubhouse. And I'm like, oh, there you are, I've been waiting for you, I don't know what happened. And she starts going into her story of what happened. I don't think she was able to get us drinks, I don't remember. But anyway, the guy offers to take both of us back in the golf cart to where we started. And my sister's like, yeah, sure, that would be great. And I'm like, okay. So my sister hops into the golf cart and he drives us back to where we started. And as he's driving us back, he tells us, he starts asking us, like, where do we live? And starts to tell us that he can drive us home in his car. If we don't mind just waiting a couple minutes, he'll go grab his car real quick and he'll be able to drive us home. That way we're not walking home in the dark, and because it's starting to get to like dusk now. And so he offers us that. My sister, she's only 11. She's like, yeah, that would be great. She wasn't thinking, like, we don't really know this guy, although I'm starting to think that. So he drops us off, and then he tells us we should wait right there. He'll be 2 minutes. He's going to go grab his car and to not move. So we get out, and I'm telling my sister, like, why did you say yes? We don't really know this guy. And she's like, well, it's getting dark out. Cars aren't going to be able to see us. We're going to get in trouble because nobody knows we went for this walk, and it's getting dark out. By the time we get home, we're going to be grounded, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, we're both overheated. We still don't have drinks. So we're discussing this, and before we can even, like, get to a resolution, he is, like, pulled up. And at that point, I just agree with her, and he tells us to get into the vehicle, and I go to the back seat, and he tells me, no, you sit up front. And I'm like, okay, but I listen to him. I get into the front seat, and my sister gets into the back seat. So we get in, and I was by this point worried, but he was very friendly. He was young, and he was dressed real nice because he works at this golf course. He told us he did. So I was a little hesitant, but we needed to get home, so I wasn't too scared yet. But as we start driving, he starts kind of dilly-dallying again, like he was at the golf course. And he starts asking us, like, where was the restaurant we went to, and he wants me to direct him there, so I direct him. And I told him it was already closed, but he still wanted to drive us there. So he drives us to this, to the restaurant, and he's like, oh yeah, it is closed, like I told him. And I go, like, we really need to get home and everything. So he backs up, and then he acts like he's going to drive us home, but instead he starts taking, like, back roads that don't even, like, go to our house. And looking back, I think he was stalling for time. I don't really know why he was doing that, but he just keeps, like, not taking us where I'm telling him to go, and he keeps, like, talking about other things and telling us, like, how he wants to show us his apartment where he lives, and that he lives close by. And I keep telling him, like, we're going to be in trouble, we got to get home. So finally, like, I keep insisting that, and he's like, you just need to relax, and changing the subject, but I keep harping on that. So then finally he's like, okay, fine, we'll drive by your house, and we'll see if anybody's there. Because I told him I think my brothers are probably home by this point, my mom maybe. And meanwhile, my sister is like not realizing like this is getting kind of scary. So she tells him, "Oh, I don't think they'll be home, for another hour or something." So, but I convince him to drive us by the house. So he drives by the house real slow, and he's like looking for vehicles, and he tells me like there's no vehicles there. So like there's nothing to worry about. And I'm like, and my sister's like, yeah, I don't think they're home yet. But she's only saying this because she's 11 and doesn't understand like the gravity of the situation. So I keep telling him, well, they might not have they might have parked their car further away, or I just keep giving him excuses like, and he just starts to get angry with me, and he changes his tone, and he's like, would you just relax? And then I got scared, and I just like shut down, and I stopped insisting that we get to our house at this point because he's not taking us. He just keeps driving by the house slowly. So I agreed for him to take us to his apartment. So where he lives is actually not that far from where our house is. It's basically at the end of the road, and if you turn and then just go a few feet and make another turn, it's like 5 minutes away, and it's a garage that's detached from a home that's being rented out, and he lives on the upstairs floor. So he takes us to his apartment, and he takes us inside, and then he locks it. And I am not feeling good. I felt I had a bad feeling once we got into his vehicle, but now I'm like, oh my god, we're at his apartment. I'm just thinking like I want to get home. And he starts to give us a tour of his apartment and making emphasis on his bedroom and what's in his bedroom, and that he owns this place by himself, and just showing us like his fish tanks in his bedroom, and giving us this whole tour. And then we go into the living room and we sit down. I sit down on the couch, and my sister sits down on a chair in the corner, and he offers us alcohol. He asks if we want beer, if we want something to drink, and we both were hungry and thirsty, so I just like refused the alcohol and said I just want like soda. And so he gets a soda, and he starts to drink. He gets himself a beer, and he sits right down next to me, and within a couple minutes he's still making small talk with us, and then he starts to put his arm around my neck and get closer to me, and then his cell phone rings, and he shoots up from the couch, and you can tell it's his parents by the conversation he's having with them, and he's not telling them anything about the fact that we're like being held captive at his apartment. He's just like making small talk, saying nothing much is going on, talking to them about working at the golf course or something, and then he like goes out of the room. He goes down. He lived on the like second story of the garage, so he locks the door and goes down the steps and goes out, and like motioned for us to just like be quiet before he leaves. So by this point, when he leaves, I start telling my sister, like, I'm really getting scared. I'm like terrified now, and we need to start thinking of an exit plan, and even thinking, do we need a weapon? Like, what can we use as a weapon if things get really bad? And like my sister by this point is now agreeing that she's scared as well. We're both frightened. We don't know why he took us to this apartment instead of dropping us off at home. And just we don't feel good about the situation. So after a few minutes, we hear him come back up the stairs. We stop talking about it, and he comes in and like goes and puts on party music. He had like speakers next to his TV, and then starts like making small talk again, like where were we? And then he sits down next to me, and again puts his arm around me, starts kind of like inching closer and closer to me. And meanwhile, he also has, keep in mind, he also has like pornographic DVD laying right out on the coffee table. Okay. And then he starts asking us more intimate questions like, what do we like to do with boys? Like, do we date boys? What do we like to do for fun at parties? Just like really inappropriate questions. And my sister's scared at this point, so she's just starting to kind of like talk about whatever, just like nervous, like talking nonstop. And meanwhile, I'm just insisting, like, I'm getting worried. I want to go home. Like, I keep calm, but I'm also kind of like starting to freeze up. And I'm just I try to keep the focus on not the fact that I want to go home, but like, oh, we're going to be in trouble. We need to get home because our brothers will start looking for us. And I keep trying to put emphasis on that because he got angry before when I said, like, I want to go home. So he starts to get angry with me, and he was like blowing on my cheek and like trying to whisper in my ear and just being disgusting. But because I keep insisting, like, we're gonna get in trouble and blah blah, and I won't like let up on that, finally he goes, fine, you can make a phone call and that's it. And again, he's getting angry again, and but I'm like relieved that I can make a phone call home. But before he lets me call on his landline, he rehearses with me and my sister what I'm gonna say. So he makes up with us the story that we had went for a walk with my best friend at the time, and that we were just gonna go to Wawa, like a convenience store in Pennsylvania near our house, and that we were coming home, we'd be home in like an hour. So we rehearsed the story a couple times, and then he lets me call home. But he is sitting right next to me as I'm making this phone call, glaring at me, intimidating me, watching everything I do. So I call home, and I got one of my brothers on the other line picks up, and I'm relieved that he picked up the phone. So I start telling him the story that we had made up because this guy is, watching everything I do. But I'm trying to tell my brother, like, in a way, something's not right, like, by making pauses and stuff like that. And my brother is, like, kind of freaking out on the other end, like, where are you guys? It's late. It's dark out. This story doesn't add up, and it really didn't. And I think he maybe could even tell in my voice that I was like scared, but I was continuing on with this lie because I knew this guy was watching me. So he starts to believe it and is like, well, you guys better get home, like, you guys are gonna be in trouble and blah blah. And he just eventually, after me like convincing him, is like, okay, but you guys gotta get home in like an hour. And then I could tell he was still unsure about it, but this guy is, making all these motions while I'm on the call as it's getting longer, going like this and, like, get off the phone. So I'm like, okay, we'll be home. And then I like hung up, and I sit down next to him, like, again, and he starts getting closer to me, and I'm really upset because I wanted to tell my brother so badly, like, what was happening, but I was just so terrified that I couldn't tell him the truth. And I guess, so then what happened was, while after this happened, my brother tells my oldest brother the conversation he had, and my oldest brother is like, no, 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 that is not okay. Call that number back right now. And at the time, caller ID was new, and we had just gotten it installed on our landline. So thank God for that. Because then, um, as this guy is continuing to be a creep towards me and everything, and not stop like trying to hit on me and stuff, all of a sudden the landline starts to ring, and he's like, don't answer it. This guy tells us not to answer it, and we hear a voicemail of my oldest brother saying, I don't know where they are right now, but they better get home right now. We're calling the police. You guys are in a world of trouble, blah, blah, blah. And then he hangs up. And as soon as this guy hears that, he shoots up and is like, we have to go right now. And his whole demeanor changes again. And I'm just like, oh, thank God. So me and my sister, we follow him out of his apartment, and we get into his car, and he starts to drive us back home finally. And he starts to rehearse with us what we're going to say again, like what is the story about us walking to Wawa, and to not ever say that we met him. And he wants to meet up with me again, and he insists on dropping us off like a half-mile away from our house. And my little sister's like, you can't do that, you better drop us off closer. And he's arguing with her, getting angry, and eventually he agrees to drop us off like a quarter of a mile away from our house on the train tracks. And as I'm leaving, he gives me his telephone number, and he tries to kiss me on the lips, but I turned my face away from him. So he kisses me on the cheek, and he's like, we'll get together soon or whatever. And then we leave. So we go back home, and just thank God for my older brother, because he literally saved me and my sister's lives that night. So the police are called. Everybody in my family is so worried but grateful that we're home. And the police do get involved. There's a police report that's made. But unfortunately, they pretty much slap him on the wrist and don't do much more than that. The police I believe they just suggested that he go to counseling. And I don't even think he did that. He literally quit his job, packed up, and moved back home with his parents, is what I've heard. And nothing really happened to him other than he lost his job and had to move because we weren't raped or we weren't physically assaulted. The police were like, there's not much we can do. And that's really unfortunate, because I don't think he really learned his lesson. I hope this guy learned his lesson, but I still wonder about it to this day, because I feel like when there's not a lot of consequences, people don't learn their lesson. And it scares me to think if he's done this again. And anyway, that's why I think there needs to be more strict laws on that. I don't think the laws have really changed since I was 14. I'm now nearly 32, and I think, unfortunately, things don't usually, there's no criminal sentencing, I feel unless something terrible has happened. So I guess I'm mostly just telling this as a cautionary tale. If you are going to go for a walk, make sure you tell your family. If they're not home, call them, leave a voicemail, leave a note saying where you're going, how long you're going to be gone for. Take a cell phone with you. Back then, cell phones were hardly being used unless you were an adult, and even then they were really expensive. But nowadays, everybody should have a cell phone pretty much on them. If you're a teenager by the time you're a teenager, you should have a cell phone. So take a cell phone with you. Also, take drinks and food with you if you're going for a long walk. That way you're not in the situation where you're desperate for drinks or food and you're putting yourself in a potentially dangerous situation. Had we not gone to that golf course, I don't even know that we would have been in that situation. But we were thirsty, so we went to this golf course. So always take extra drinks, extra food with you. When you go for walks, go early in the daytime. Do not go close to dusk time or when it's dark out, especially if you're a female. Also, I recommend taking something that's like a weapon with you, like pepper spray, or they make those keychains that have like spikes on them. I recommend that, especially if you're adult, or you've been trained how to use a weapon. Also, if you're younger, if you're like a teenager, don't go for walks that are too far from home. You shouldn't be going on couple mile walks. You should be at the most like walking to the end of the road from your house and back, and that's it. Also, this is like one of the most obvious things and one of the most dangerous things you can do is never get into the car of someone you don't know. I was taught don't get into a car with strangers, but this person to me was dressed nice. He was like in polos and khakis. We knew he worked for a golf course. He was a young man. He was friendly. He was well groomed. I guess alarm bells were going off, but at the same time, I thought, this doesn't look like a stranger. He's not, like what you're told when you're younger in a trench coat or an old man or looking creepy or anything like that. But it doesn't matter what somebody looks like. It can be a female. It can be an older woman. Don't get into their car if you don't know them. Only get into the car of family members and close family friends. That's it. Do not get into a car. As soon as you get to that second location, you're now putting yourself really at risk when you get into somebody's vehicle. And then don't think, oh, well, I live in a nice neighborhood and this person looks nice. Do not make the same mistake that we made. And then a couple of things that I did do right is I kept insisting that I need to get home. So if you do make the mistake of getting in somebody else's vehicle, keep insisting that you need to get home. Keep insisting. Even if they're starting to get angry, okay, try to remain calm, but then keep bringing it up once they've calmed down again, that you need to get home. Never forget that you need to get home. Doesn't matter what they tell you, what they try to brainwash you. You know that you need to get home, so don't forget that. And start making an exit strategy if they then take you somewhere like their home. Start to think, how can I get out of this? When are they going to leave me alone? When am I going to be safe to leave? Because you're never going to be 100% safe to leave once you've gotten to their house. But try to think of like, when are opportunities where they're not watching me or when they're going to be gone? That's your time that you should try to escape. And if you can't escape, if you can't get outside the house, like he kept locking us in every time he would, like when he would make the phone calls and stuff, like we knew he was right outside. That's okay, but figure out then when you can make a phone call. Because even if you can't tell the person on the other end that you're in danger, that you've been kidnapped, like I couldn't do that, you can still start sending off alarm bells to them by your tone of voice, by the story not adding up. And in this day and age, like everybody has caller ID now, so they'll be able to track where you are from that. So try to really make a phone call either when they're there or when they're not going to be watching you. and just try to remain calm. So when he was getting angry or agitated, I did try to just back off a little bit, and but then just kept insisting once he was calm, like reiterating why we needed to get home. And then lastly, when you do get, oh yeah, and also one more thing, refuse substances. If they're offering you alcohol or drugs, refuse them. I refused alcohol from him, so did my sister. And also, when you are safe, call the police. So call the police even if you can while you're being captured, and you get a second alone, call the police. But once you get home, make sure you call the police because they need to learn that they need to have consequences for kidnapping. And like start making, there needs to be a police report being made so that we can start tracking this person as a dangerous individual. So we did that, so that was another thing we did right. And then yeah, so that's pretty much all my tips. Especially as a teenager, I think you're really at risk for being kidnapped, and as a female as well. So always be aware of your surroundings. Um, be aware if somebody's following you, you need to get away from them. Like, get away from somebody. As soon as your gut instinct is telling you something isn't right, you need to remove yourself from that situation. Listen to your gut, and I hope these tips are helpful. And if you have a story like mine, please share it because we need to get the word out that kidnappings do happen more often than I think people even realize. It's just that we only hear about the stories where somebody winds up murdered, or something really bad happens. But I feel like there's a lot of people out there who have had similar situations like mine, and we need to tell those stories so people realize it doesn't matter where you live or if you think you're safe. Like, it can happen to anyone. And try to be always alert and try to be safe out there, guys. Okay, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me comments below, and if you'd like, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, till next time. Bye, guys.